Hey everybody, good evening. I'm Congressman Scott Perry. Thanks for joining this evening's telephone town hall for the constituents of the 10th District of Pennsylvania. Let me start out by apologizing if you were hoping to do this at around 5. The voting session here in D.C. ran late, and so that's why this had to be moved back. So I thank you for taking some time away from your family, maybe your dinner or the plans you might have had tonight to join the call and engage in a conversation about what's happening in our nation today. Now, at any time during the call, if you've been on these, the other ones that I've done, if you have a question for me, please press *3 and get yourself in the queue. That's *3. And just to give you kind of an update and start the conversation, this week we are back in Washington, D.C. The House has started consideration of the fiscal year 2021 funding for the federal government. So you know, the federal government's year starts. The funding starts the end of or ends in September and begins in October. So you know, if you wonder why it is that way, that's how that's set up. So this is an annual process that we're supposed to do. It includes 12 separate what we call appropriations measures. So that's when you say appropriations, that's where we take your tax dollars and we decide what we're spending on and how much of it. And that's the appropriations process. So it usually takes, quite honestly, most of the spring and the summer to draft, to debate, and to pass these bills. However, this year, the Speaker has decided we're going to do it here in 2 weeks. And I will just tell you, I'm concerned about the level of consideration of how we're going to spend your taxpayer monies and get full member input. And let me explain that a little bit. First of all, this week we'll consider funding for the State Department. These are some of the 12 bills: the State Department, foreign operations, agriculture, rural development, interior, the environment, military constructions, and veterans affairs. That's what we're going to be looking at this week. Now, it's critical that Congress as a body takes the time to carefully and individually consider these appropriations packages for a lot of reasons, and one of the greatest reasons is that there's limited resources, right? There's a lot of things we want, but we can't afford them all, and of course that's one of the reasons we have a national debt that we do, because it exceeds $26 trillion now. It's because we keep on spending more than we take in, and I see that as unsustainable, and future generations, somebody's going to be forced to repay that. And with that, just as a process discussion, again, and if you're just dialing in, press *3 if you have a question. As a process item, we usually take each amendment to these bills one by one. So, if somebody has an idea they want to amend into the interior bill, like, one time I had an amendment for the train station in Gettysburg. That would be in the interior bill because it's national parks. And we would debate that, and then there's an up or down, a yes or no vote on that, each amendment. And there literally could be hundreds of amendments to these. And so it's a time-consuming process, to be sure, but it's appropriate. That's how we decide what we can afford, what we can't afford, and what's too much, and what we want to spend it on. That's not happening at this time. We are doing these amendments in a fashion that's called en bloc. So literally, we might take 100 or 150 amendments at one time, and debate that for 5 minutes, and then everybody has a chance to vote on all 150 amendments at one time. And as you can imagine, there are probably going to be some things in there you support, and there are going to be some things in there you don't support in the amendment package, and you just got to decide which way it is, and then vote. And of course, it's just I will tell you, it is not optimal, to be sure. And I just think that Congress must start making very tough decisions and being honest with the American people about how we spend your hard-earned tax dollars, and not rush through what always seems to be bloated federal spending. Now, as you know, I've led and supported many efforts to responsibly reduce federal spending, including a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution, which we have not voted on yet. So that's what's happening right now in Washington, D.C., outside of Washington and back at home. the effects of COVID-19 and the impacts to our economy and the shutdown are still being felt, as you know. As the past few weeks have shown, our nation's fight against COVID-19 and the negative effects of our economic shutdown aren't finished. We certainly, and I certainly, recognize this reality, as do many members in D.C., and this week we're negotiating the next round of coronavirus relief, as we see will likely be necessary. The next relief package, I think, must focus on jobs, getting our kids back in school, and our healthcare system, and that's kind of that's what I'm looking at as our priorities for that. Our nation is the greatest in the world, and I think we can protect both our communities from the virus and support our neighbors during this time. I just think we can do those two things. Now, this week we saw the governor mandate a new shutdown for our restaurants and bars, and even this morning I got notices of several that are closing, or there's a very good chance that they just will never reopen again, and that's very sad to me. We're also witnessing a national debate on reopening schools in the fall, and we're witnessing that right at home in this congressional district and across our Commonwealth. So during tonight's event, I look forward to answering any of your questions about the latest on the virus and our response to it, or any legislation that you might have heard, or just questions in general you might have. I know we get questions about, believe it or not, a change shortage in the United States. When I say change, like dollars and quarters, nickels, pennies, whatever. So we will take any one of your questions. And again, dial *3 or press *3 if you have a question, and we'll get right to it. So with that, thanks again for the call, and I think Laura's on the line. Laura, do we have a question?
We do. Our first question is from Thor K.
Okay, Thor, are you on the line?
Oh, hello, Congressman. I hope you're doing really well. You've had a really great record recently, so I appreciate your help. When I speak to folks, when it comes to things that you just made the priority, I guess the priority is the response to the coronavirus. But I understand that that's something that it's hard for you to affect right away. So I was hoping if there's any time that you have in the next 20 or 30 moments to explain what we can do all together to help get kids back in school.
Well, Thor, I appreciate the question. And look, I know a lot of people are scared, right? And there's a lot of information that is conflicting and competing. And I think that, people, family members, kids, our community at large, in some cases, we just don't know what to do. And that's unfortunate, but it is indeed understandable. I think there's a couple things that each of us can do, and unfortunately, it takes some effort and some work. But I think we have to feel comfortable with this. So there's a fair amount of research out there regarding school opening and what has happened. I will tell you that the science consistently has shown that keeping our kids locked out of school is taking a tremendous toll to their learning, as well as, quite honestly, their emotional and mental health. And the science is showing that young children are not transmission vectors, so people aren't getting coronavirus from their kids, generally speaking. Now, when I say kids, that's a pretty broad range, so I want to be a little more specific, especially your younger kids, your middle school and below. A study out of Germany concluded that children may actually serve as a brake on the virus infection chain, so the child gets it and may or may not be symptomatic. Oftentimes, I think most times, are not symptomatic, and that's where it ends. They literally do not give it to their parents, to the teacher, to their grandparents. That particular study also found that the virus doesn't spread easily in schools, and you probably know this, Thor. The Academy of American Pediatrics came out and said we should focus on the science and not the politics. And a lot of this, I think, unfortunately, has become political. But the Academy said that kids should be physically present in schools. And I think we have shown that our daycares and businesses have proven that they can take the necessary steps to reduce risk and keep teachers, parents and importantly our children safe. So first, I think, Thor, is to educate yourself if you can, get some research, and certainly we can be a resource to you in that regard. But, you know, some people might say, well, we don't trust your numbers or whatever. That's fine. But do some research and then let your school districts know. I think that many of the school districts right now and very recently have been kind of reaching out to the community, the parents, and the community at large to say, you know, how would you like to see us do this? Would you prefer all distance learning? Would you prefer hybrid, so many days in class and so many not, or what have you? And I think that the school districts, look, we have a great school system in the Commonwealth, and just like, you know, this system, they work for us, and so they're looking for your input. And if you feel comfortable, if the parents feel comfortable sending their kids to school and can kind of let the administration and the school board know that, I think they'll be more inclined to do that. Now, it's going to require, you know, some changes, whether it's taking temperatures in the morning, whether, you know, I know that on occasion your child might get sick, and oftentimes you might give somebody might give their child Motrin to cool down the temperature a little bit to get through school. You know, it's going to take some added responsibility from everybody to make sure that we're all safe. But I think as long as we can operate within those parameters, we can reduce the risk. We can have our kids in school and combat the coronavirus at the same time. So I think it's a twofold thing, Thor. I think it's informing yourself and to the point where you're comfortable with your position, and then letting your school board, your school administration, the people around you know how you feel. I think it's a great question, and I'm really glad you asked it. So I hope that provides a little bit of guidance for you, and if not, you certainly can give me a call back and we can discuss it further. Laura, is there, again, dial *3 if you have a question for me. Laura, do we have another question on the line?
Our next question is from Corinne S.
All right, Corinne, are you on the line?
Yes. Hi, Congressman Perry. My question is, they're talking about an additional stimulus for this COVID thing, and they must be crazy because we are already $26 million in debt, $1 trillion in debt.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wish it were a million. Yeah, right.
Yeah. We cannot afford another $1 trillion in debt. And so I'm just thinking, please don't approve this. These people need to get back to work. And it just really scares me when I think how much in debt we are. It really does.
Well, it does me as well, and I'm glad you brought it up so I can address that a little bit. I will tell you, we had what we call a conference where we all kind of get together and discuss what's upcoming, and I went to the microphone and I let the folks know that while they're discussing this, in Pennsylvania in particular, and, you know, look, you know, I'm talking to representatives from around the country, so they might not be familiar with what's happening in Pennsylvania. I understand that they're representing their own states and their own districts, but I just let them know that, number one, we still in Pennsylvania have not finished spending what we as members of Congress have already approved in the past, right? We really, right now, I don't know the exact number of how many billions of dollars still sit in the CARES Act funding that has been delegated, so to speak, to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That is a portion of that, and a fairly large portion when you talk billions of dollars, is still there. And so that'd be number one. Number two, in the case of Pennsylvania in particular, whether it's unemployment compensation, that has taken somewhere in the average, I think, of 45 to 50 days to get from the time it has been applied for to the time that people get it. So we're still operating way behind the schedule for unemployment compensation, and that's unfortunate. But also that in particular, look, I don't represent Lebanon County, but in this case, our governor is holding. I don't know. He's penalizing Lebanon County with the CARES funding. Now, I've been vocal about that, and I'm frustrated that the CARES money that we voted for. And look, I voted for it too. I'll be clear with you. I voted for that. The pandemic was on. We were putting people out of work and putting people out of business. And when government does that, I consider that a taking of their livelihood, a taking of their business, and so government has to compensate them for that. And so if that, when the pandemic, especially in the beginning, which is when all this stuff was approved, we didn't know a lot, but we knew that we were putting people out of work and out of business, and they had to be able to pay their bills and exist. So I voted for that. But we have learned a lot since that time. And but the point I want to make about Lebanon County and Pennsylvania in particular is that's not the governor's money. That's the taxpayers' money. And Lebanon County, regardless of the decisions they've made, deserve to get their portion of that money, just like every other one of the 67 counties in Pennsylvania got. And I just let my colleagues know that I would be very reluctant to vote for a package where that could happen again. And the governor has said, well, they won't follow my requirements, and there have to be consequences for that. Well, I would say this to the governor in this regard. The governor just took action to reduce and shut down restaurants across the state. He's provided no metrics that can prove that the coronavirus is being spread at restaurants as opposed to any other establishment, right? I don't know why restaurants are, get the heavy hammer there, but he's provided no proof, and so far I don't think he's going to. I haven't seen any indication that he will. But also, you're taking their livelihood away. So he's doing that at the state level, and then his answer is well, Congress needs to just approve more money for that. Well, if the governor's going to take their livelihood away, then the governor should make them whole, right? That's a taking at the state level. We did a taking at the federal level, when this first started. But now this is a taking at the state level, and it should not be the federal government's responsibility to then come in and make up for the decisions of the governor, which many people feel are inconsistent and irresponsible. So I will just tell you. I will take a look at what they come up with. I let you know in the beginning of the call, my priorities, if we do anything, will be supporting our healthcare system, reducing the risk for our children, teachers in the schools this fall, protections for our workers and small businesses that have been severely impacted, and getting people that have been unemployed safely back to work. And if it doesn't do those things, I'm going to have a difficult time voting for it, but I'm going to keep an open mind. So appreciate the question. Again, dial *3 if you have a question. Laura, who is next in the queue?
Our next question is from Tiffany M.
Hi, Tiffany. What can I do for you?
Thank you so much for doing this. So my question probably comes out of frustration at this point, which I'm sure you hear a lot of.
Sure.
And
that's okay.
You've mentioned it several times with the cutback to the restaurant business. And large area here, large company that just shut down. That's how many more people out of jobs aren't going to be able to support their families. Businesses that may never reopen. And as you said, there's no statistics for this. It does follow suits of other governors that have chosen to follow or lead in the quest there. But how do we get them to at least take measures to stop the spread based on data, which was all we heard? Looking at the map from Pennsylvania that was put out, for example, and I know it's not our area, but as an example, Potter County has 16 cases this whole time. So how is it fair to shut down an industry statewide without any data? And what can we do to stop this craziness? It doesn't just affect the restaurants or the people that work in the restaurants. It's the suppliers and the vendors and just a multitude of people on the chain that are losing revenue and could be out potentially forever because of this I'm sorry, ridiculous nonsense that we're facing here.
Well, Tiffany, you said it probably better than I could, and I sense your frustration, and I share your frustration. I can assure you. And when you say what can we do, I will tell you, I am at a little bit of a loss for words in that, because I have written the governor on numerous occasions and tried to reach out in numerous ways, not to be pejorative and not to be critical, but to try to work with him, whether it's on this issue or whether it's on the nursing home issue, what have you. And I find the administration to be unresponsive. I have worked through our state legislature, both House and Senate, to try and get my concerns vetted and heard and responded to. But I will tell you, and as you well, maybe you don't know, Tiffany, that the state House and Senate have been in session essentially this whole time, where in D.C. we have not been in session much of the time. The Speaker has shut down essentially the House of Representatives for much of the session since March. But the House and Senate in Pennsylvania have been in, and they have been passing bills I will tell you, they passed one to end the emergency declaration, which gives the governor the power to do these things without question. And then it went to court, and of course, unfortunately, the Supreme Court, in my opinion, found erroneously on behalf of the governor, and so he has, at this point, unlimited and unchecked power. And I would say the only thing we can do, I guess, is as citizens, is to voice our very strong discord and concern about that kind of thing, and I think that there's probably a lot of people that feel the same way that you do, but I think that they feel like their voices won't be heard, and so they don't say anything. But I think that you really have to have your voice heard, and you have to say something. So believe it or not, a call to the governor's office, a letter to the governor's office. Tiffany, it might not seem like much, and it might feel small, a small drop in the bucket. But if everybody on this call and everybody across the Commonwealth that feels the way that you do does the same thing, it is going to increase the pressure. And I think we're due the answers, whether it's the data. Look, if the data supports the action, I think that people will will want to be supportive, because we all want to be responsible and safe and do the right thing for our community, our neighbors, our family members, et cetera. But it's hard to take when it doesn't seem to make sense, like you said, when you got certain places that have very low incidence of the virus or of the effects of the virus, having the same policy foisted upon them as places that have a higher incidence that might legitimately need the requirement. We're willing to be good citizens, but we understand too that the government serves us, not the other way around. And so I hope that I sense your frustration. That's probably not going to be a sufficient answer for you, Tiffany, but I don't really have anything else. I mean, I'm a citizen like you are, and I'm a constituent of the governor, and I've written and called as well. So, but I think a lot of people more need to do that, and I think they will as this continues to go on through the summer and into the fall here. So, I appreciate the call and the question, Tiffany. All right, Laura, is there another question, please? And again, dial *3 if you have a question.
The next question comes from Jean F.
All right, Jean. Jean, what can I do for you? Are you on the line, Jean?
Hello. Congressman.
Hello, ma'am.
This is Cumberland County Commissioner Jean Fauci.
Hi, Jean. How are you, Commissioner?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm really hoping to get your position this evening on masking, because
okay.
I get so many phone calls from our small businesses who are following the rules. They are masking. They are socially distancing people. They are doing their best to keep their businesses sustainable, to pull us out of recession, and to keep people healthy. And Congressman, I'm so concerned because there is such an anti-masking cult in this area of Pennsylvania, and I'd like to know your position on that. It is scientific fact that masking is saving lives. It's preventing the spread of COVID, and it's keeping our businesses in business and allowing people to make money and to have their livelihoods. And I would really love to hear your position on masking, because I'm so concerned about what is going on in this area of Pennsylvania and this anti-masking effort.
Okay, well, thank you for the question, Commissioner. I don't know that there's an actual anti-masking effort. I don't sense that or see that. Certainly not anything orchestrated. But I do understand that there are some folks that don't want to wear them, and some have legitimate health issues why they can't or don't want to, whether it's breathing, there's a breathing obstruction or something like that. So there are some legitimate reasons in that regard. But I would say this: if you can't socially distance, right, and that's the terminology you use, if you can't keep the 6 feet away and you think you might be jeopardizing the person next to you, and I say that because I think I need to be clear. Again, the science also shows that children, especially adolescent, the elementary school children and so on and so forth, they don't transmit the virus, right? So, but if you're near, let's say, somebody that's elderly, and you can't keep a safe distance from them, and you might transmit the virus unwittingly, then it would be appropriate. But I would also say that that the science goes kind of both ways on the masks, right? So some people say you have to use the N95. Some people are using a handkerchief. Now, I don't think the handkerchief is as effective as the N95, and some people see it as a safety measure, and some people see it as a conformity measure. And I understand both sides of that. I will tell you, I don't think that it would be a good idea to have the federal government or state government, or really any level of government, to have some kind of a mask mandate, because then it goes to enforcement. And even right now, we're putting our businesses in a position to be the police in this regard, and that should not be their role. And they're trying to conduct business, and they don't want to have to run around after customers that simply refuse for whatever reason. And like I said, some have legitimate reasons, legitimate health reasons not to wear a mask. So from my standpoint, if I can't keep socially distant, and I know that the person that I might have to get near is going to be uncomfortable, or I'm uncomfortable, or have a question, I have a mask with me all the time. And I would just encourage people that where you can and should do that, that's a good idea. But there's also the hygiene of the mask as well. People lay them down. People don't wash them. I mean, there are studies about what's inside the mask, including bacteria and so on and so forth. And so, look, it's a lot of common sense here, and the mask kind of goes hand in hand with many other things that are as effective and are part of the effectiveness of the whole program, which again is trying to maintain distance where you can, and quite honestly, hand washing that lasts for the 20 seconds or more. That many people aren't used to, and those type of things. Obviously, covering your sneeze appropriately. If you're sick, do not, and you're not sure until you get the test. Don't present yourself outside of circumstances where you can be away from people. Those type of things. All that plays into it, Commissioner. And but we've got to remember too that this is America, and people have this choice for themselves, and so we just ask people to be responsible, and I think we can be responsible. But the shaming thing, that if I can use that terminology that comes with it, is also very problematic for some people. That you can't make, as they say, you can't judge a book by its cover, and you might not know why they don't have a mask on, and like I said, they might have a legitimate health reason. So I don't see a concerted effort, but I think that obviously there are times where it certainly is appropriate or can be appropriate. And I hope that does answer your question about my position on masks. All right, Laura, is there another question, please?
The next question comes from Ann P.
All right, Ann?
Yes.
Ann, what can I do for you, ma'am?
Thank you for taking my question. I really appreciate it. I would like to get your opinion on the president sending federal troops to Portland. And the reason I ask is that now Philadelphia, he's talked tonight about sending troops to Philadelphia to kind of squash the protesting. And I'd like to know your opinion about using our federal troops to do that.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the question. And let's start out with a little bit of terminology, and I hope you'll indulge me here. The federal troops. So when I think of troops, I think of the U.S. military, and that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the Federal Protective Service and things related, such as the Federal Marshal Service or Homeland Security components that would go hand in hand with the Federal Protective Service. So that'd be number one, and from a terminology standpoint, when people say federal troops, what you're talking about is components of law enforcement at the federal level, and specifically those designated to protect federal property, like the federal courthouse or something of that respect. And then the next piece of terminology would be protester versus rioter. And in Portland in particular, while I'm sure, even though I haven't been there, I'm certain that there are peaceful protesters that want to voice their concerns. And of course, as a person that takes an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, that remains paramount in my priorities. That's one of the things that we demand as our right, to be able to seek redress peacefully from our government for our grievances. And so but I think I need to make that distinction, and particularly in Portland and some other places where peaceful protests have turned into violent riots, and where federal property has been either, I guess, at risk of loss, or has been damaged, or is being significantly damaged. And the president, in this case, has an obligation not only to secure that property, and if the local police or law enforcement agencies or governing bodies can't or refuse to do it and don't ask for the help, I think we would find that the president, any president, would be derelict by not protecting that property that then we would have to go back and pay through our taxes to rebuild and reconstruct and so on and so forth. And also, let me just say this also. No matter where we are as citizens, each of us has included in our rights is the right to live in some kind of a state where we have a level of safety that is provided by through the taxes by the law enforcement that is provided. And if the law enforcement, again, either is told that they can't provide that security, or they're unable to because of maybe the size of what's happening, that they don't. But there are citizens in those locations that don't want to be subject to rioting, and don't want to be subject to being concerned about their safety or their property being destroyed just because they're in the vicinity of a place where maybe even peaceful protests turn violent. And who, if the local authorities won't protect their civil rights, who will do it? It is literally the job then of the federal government. So in this case, and in particular with Portland, where riots, I think, were a day like 55 or something like that. I'm not sure that's exactly right, but let's say we're in the range of 50 days of this kind of activity, and particularly where federal property is under siege and is in jeopardy of destruction. I think the president would be derelict for not protecting it, and of course he can't order the local police to do it. What he has at his disposal is the Federal Protective Service, which is designed to do that, and the Federal Marshal Service, and then elements of Homeland Security in that regard. And so in that instance, I do think that it is appropriate. I certainly support peaceful protesting, but I do not support riotous behavior that is violent, that is unsafe, and that is associated with the destruction of personal and public property. Ann, I hope that answers your question on my thoughts on what's happening, and I hope that shed a little light on it, because again, I think sometimes we have to multi-source our information. You might hear one side of the story, but sometimes we got to dig to hear all sides of the story, and it's in many cases protest, but it's in a whole lot of other cases too. It's protest plus violent riots that are problematic. So with that, thank you, Ann. Okay, Laura, next question, please.
The next question is from Charlie L.
Hey, Charlie.
Hello, Congressman.
Yes, sir.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the unemployment benefits
Yes,
from
sir.
the federal government. I'm a gig worker. I'm retired. I'm on Social Security, and I need to earn about $1,000 a month in order to make the ends meet.
Yeah.
I've been driving for Uber and Lyft for almost a year and a half and have been able to breach that gap. But now, with the Dickinson students, which are my principal source of revenue, are not coming back, I'm stuck on unemployment for looks like a fairly long term. So I want to encourage you to continue some kind of supplement from the feds to help us get through this time.
Well, and we're looking at that, Charlie. And as I said, as we look at whatever the package is, getting our folks back to work is going to be one of my primary concerns. But also, I will tell you, we're looking at the unemployment compensation package, and I did vote for the expansion of unemployment benefits under the CARES Act. But it was unprecedented in scope, and quite honestly, it was flawed to a certain extent. And I'm hoping that I had a binary choice, right? You either vote yes or you vote no, and there were flaws to it. But I knew that it was either that or nothing, and that many people would be left in the breach. But we have an opportunity now, Charlie, to try and get some of that right if indeed we are going to do that. But I would also say to you that I do think that the best remedy, and I think, I don't know, but I think you would agree, would be to get back to work, whether that's Dickinson College or your local school districts or most local businesses. And again, I still think I'm of the mindset that we can reduce the risk of COVID-19 and work effectively and safely and get our economy back going so that we don't have to deal with that. So if we do have to deal with it, I hope that it is on a short-term basis, and both you, Charlie, and the students at Dickinson can get back to the life that they want to lead, and without the fear of having to depend on unemployment or worry about COVID-19 ruining their lives and their experience, whether you're driving or whether you're at school. So I will tell you, just like I did at the beginning of the call, I'm going to have an open mind about it when it comes, but I have not seen it yet. It is being negotiated, I think, and just so everybody knows, right now, what it looks to me like we might take that up in the first week of August. Now, you don't quote me on that because I'm not running the schedule here, but that would be my best guess estimate right now, based on what I hear and see regarding the current schedule. And thanks, Charlie, for the question. Again, dial *3 if you have a question. Laura, is there someone else on the line here?
The next question is from James L.
Are you there, James?
I'm not sure. Is that me?
Yeah, James, that's you. What can I do for you, sir?
Okay. So you opened up your town hall here with saying that the budget is unsustainable and legislators have to do something about it. And my question is, that's why we put you guys in office. When's somebody going to stop it? I mean, we hear that every year. We hear that every year from everybody. But the budget's going up.
I hear you, James. And if you follow my votes, regardless of who the president is, regardless of who is in charge here in Congress, Republican or Democrat, if we're going to be spending money that we don't have over and over again in these bloated budgets, whether it's the budget, whether it's the appropriations bills, you can often find me, very often find me voting no on that irresponsible spending. But I am only one, James, and so there's 434 other ones here, plus 100 in the Senate, that oftentimes feel very differently about that. And I will often say that the one thing. Look, there's James, you're a smart guy. Obviously, you know that there's a lot of things in Washington, D.C. that Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, and everybody in between don't agree upon. The one thing that seems to be bipartisan in Washington, D.C. the unending appetite to spend money that we don't have. And so, so I'm offering a balanced budget amendment to being very vocal about spending, even in terms of the coronavirus relief package. When I did open up the call by also telling people that I stood up in conference and let everybody know that just spending money on places, including our Commonwealth, where we haven't completed spending the money that we already have due to coronavirus, is something that I won't be interested in doing, and we have to be responsible about it. So I work pretty hard at it, James, but like I said, I get one vote here in Congress, and oftentimes, almost every single time, these things go through with little reduction and quite honestly, to be truthful with you, it's a reduction in the increase in spending. It's not even a reduction in spending. It's just a reduction in the increase of spending. So when it comes to starting new programs or just increasing spending on existing programs and things that you might not, James, even expect me to vote no on, because you would think that maybe I have an affinity for them personally or something like that. If I find it's irresponsible and I deem it's irresponsible and that we can do a better job on it, I'm going to use my vote to express my discord. That's what I can do. I can try and work in a bipartisan fashion, in a collegial and cordial fashion with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, but express your opinion and my opinion in this regard. And sometimes it works out, but oftentimes it doesn't, and that's our system. The majority gets to the majority vote is the one that wins, and so that's just I think I've answered your question. I'm frustrated as you are with it, but that's what we can do, and we just need more folks to have that same sense of responsibility regarding spending, and unfortunately, oftentimes there's just not a lot of that around here. So. Thank you, James, for the question. Is there another question on the line, Laura?
Our next question is from Brett W.
Hi,
Hello,
Brett.
Congressman
Are you on the line?
Perry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I am. How are you doing?
I'm well, sir. What can I do for you tonight?
All right. So I don't know where to start here, but my main point is Governor Wolf, with the COVID-19 patients, you did touch on this. I did call your office a number of weeks ago, and I don't mean this as a slam, but I was told that someone would get back to me on it, and no one did. So my question is, well, number one, let me preface it by saying, and I tell this to everybody I can, Governor Wolf is no dummy. He is an educated man. He's a smart man. He's been a businessman. Yet he put COVID-19 patients, as you had already mentioned, in the nursing homes. That can only mean one thing. His plan was to kill our elderly. And I will not accept any other answer to that, because the guy, he's an educated man. He knows what he's doing. That's the only answer I can come up with. What do we do about it?
Well, Brett, first of all, let me say I apologize for the lack of follow-up. That's not how we do business, and I will check with my staff on that and see if we can address that directly with you. That having been said, I've been working diligently, again, not to be just overly critical. We understand when this whole thing started, there wasn't a lot we knew. But we know a lot more now, and the policy still remains in place, and I've tried to engage the governor in productive conversation about why the policy was put in place in the first place, why it remains in place, how it is justified. I will just let you know, we, according to the recent data, the national average is about 27.5 deaths per 1,000 residents in nursing homes, and in Pennsylvania it's at 56.5. So that's essentially double, and I attribute that to the policy. I can't find anything else to attribute it to. In that vein, I have called for federal investigations. I have engaged with our state attorney general. I've engaged with the Health and Human Services Inspector General. I have engaged with just about everybody that I can think of regarding this issue, including our own state legislature. I will just tell you this, Brett. I have gotten over the course of now a couple months of being on this mission to try and make sure that we don't continue to imperil our vulnerable senior population. I have not gotten one response from the governor on this issue. Now, I do hear on occasion from the Secretary of Health, Dr. Levine. Dr. Levine has decided that the answer is we'll just agree to disagree. So I am continuing to push on it, even as we speak with the administration. I will tell you, Brett, that one of my concerns is that the state attorney general has announced that he's considering prosecuting our nursing homes for murder. And I just find that breathtaking in the sense that if you include the fact that the governor's order required them to take COVID-19 patients, COVID-positive 19 patients or residents into their facilities, regardless of their ability to deal with it, and not giving them protective equipment, resources, professional resources, and staffing, or whatever. Which, quite honestly, we voted for in the CARES Act funding. That was what that funding was to be used for, and we gave the governors the discretion of how to use it. And they left the senior population, in my opinion, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania bare. I'm continuing to work with my colleagues, but I will tell you, I feel like I'm shouting at the ocean here. In many cases, I will tell you, I talked to Seema Verma, the administrator for Health and Human Services, CMS, the Center for Medicaid Services, and she has said this is out of her jurisdiction. She cannot investigate this. She doesn't have that jurisdiction, and so I'm not looking for the heavy hand of the federal government to come down, but I'm worried that our seniors, the family members of those seniors who have watched their loved ones die, and the facilities that have tried to care for them are not going to get a fair shake, and they're going to be blamed for this whole thing when there was nothing they could do about it. So I agree with you, Brett. I recognize and understand your frustration, and I'm fighting just as hard now as I started in the beginning on this issue. But I will tell you, the governor seems to be getting a pass on this from the media and from many people that just, I guess, are accepting that seniors must die in senior assisted living facilities and nursing homes in Pennsylvania. I don't agree with that, but I'm just going to continue on the mission to see if I can get enough support to have something done about it to, at a minimum, reverse the policy so we don't continue to imperil people as we move forward. And that's kind of where we are, Brett. Thank you. Laura, do we have another question? Again, dial *3 if you have a question for me.
Our next question is from Kurt D.
Kurt. All right, Kurt.
Good evening, Congressman. How you doing?
Yes, sir. How are you, sir? What can I do for you?
I'm doing well. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your service. I'm going to kind of go a different direction.
Okay.
Away from the pandemic. You were talking about appropriations, and my question for you is, with the new appropriations that are coming out, what are we doing to help our veterans get access to the VA? This is a big, big problem. I have a lot of friends that are Vietnam vets, Desert Storm veterans. They wait months and months to get an appointment, only to be told, well, we don't have time to do this, or get an appointment to see a specialist, and then they wait another year. What can we do to fix them? These are the people that are giving us our freedom.
Yeah, Kurt, the situation that you described is untenable and unacceptable to me. This is why I voted in favor of the Choice Act, which gives veterans the opportunity and the option to not have to travel if they can't get an appointment in the appropriate time or at the appropriate mileage. That having been said, I want to let you know, Kurt, that I just visited the Lebanon VA facility. I'm thinking it might have been last week, and no more than a week before that, but I think it was last week, to go over these things and to get a report on where we stand. Now, they have some do-outs to me, and I think that, I got the numbers, and I can't recite them off the top of my head, about how they have transitioned to, in some cases, telehealth or like a video health thing where the veteran doesn't have to come in. They can handle it over the phone lines or over, their computer screen. But still, but the numbers that I looked at showed me that they seem to be falling short on dealing with veteran issues. Now, I don't have a complete answer right now because they have to get back to me on that. They have, like I said, they have some due outs for me, but we let them know in no uncertain terms that that cannot and will not be accepted. I hope we do have some positive news on in regard of the VA and outreach to South Central Pennsylvania forthcoming, but I can't say anything more about that right now. But I want to let you know that I am on that case, and also to let you know, especially for veterans that suffer with PTSD, we have a bill in Congress. It's called the SGB, or it deals with SGB, which is a thing called stellate ganglion block, and it literally is a treatment and an outpatient treatment where somebody that is suffering the effects of PTSD or PTSI, as many people call it now, can go in, have the treatment, and walk out and have that burden removed from them directly. And when we're having 20 suicides on the average a day from our veteran population, we are obviously not making the appropriate progress. And so that was another thing that I visited our VA about, because they are not offering that right now. And many are veterans. I talk to veterans that travel literally across state lines, a couple states, to try and access that kind of care. And so that's been one of the focuses of mine, whether it's for the SGB and the PTSI or just general veteran care. And I told the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee after we passed the Choice Act, I said, I hope you're not going to tell me that we're all done here, because there are a lot of issues with the veterans' homes, with waiting lists. And I will tell you, in our area, I think that we have a pretty good track record, but across the country, we have fallen short for those who have borne the battle, as Abraham Lincoln said, and that's something that I cannot accept. I will say this to you directly, Kurt. If you have a particular issue yourself, and I'm not saying you do, or if you know of a veteran that is having an issue, whether it's they can't get in for a procedure, it's taking too long, they have to travel too far, etc., we handle those cases directly, and I would encourage you, I would beseech you to contact our office and let us be your advocate with the VA to make sure that those issues are remedied immediately. As you know, as a person who has had the honor to serve in uniform, that's not something that I take lightly, and we will not accept anything less than the best for our service members that have done their duty and have earned their veteran care. So that's where we stand with that, Kurt, and I appreciate the question. Laura, do we have another one?
The next question is from Alan B.
Are you there, Alan?
Yes, hello. Hi, Scott.
Hello, sir.
Just one comment and then a quick question.
Yes, sir.
With the unemployment, the $600 that you're giving on top of the unemployment,
yes, sir.
I own a small business in York County, and I have a lot of small businesses come in, and we do work for them, and they're saying that they can't find people to work because they call back these people to work, and they said, no, I don't want to come back because they're making more money on unemployment than they are working. And I believe, I'm not sure if this is true, or you could tell me, that they have an excuse if they don't want to come back. They say, well, I don't want to come back because I'm afraid of the virus, so that leaves them on the unemployment, and that the person that was employing them can't throw them off the unemployment and help pay for it because they won't come back because a federal government gives them an excuse not to come back. Is that true?
Well, Alan, it's generally speaking, you've kind of characterized it as truthfully as it is. So let me say this about it. We put the employer in a really, really difficult situation here because they want their employee to come back, and the employee by law cannot refuse, but the employee can also say, as Alan has alluded to, that they can claim that they're afraid of catching COVID-19, or maybe they're dealing with a family member that has contracted COVID-19 or something like that. There there are exceptions to that can be used, and it puts the employer in the position of having to try and be a detective or something like that, and losing that employee forever. And so we have heard that, Alan. I've heard that almost every single day since this started. When I talked earlier in the call about some of the flaws with the unemployment compensation, we call it pandemic unemployment compensation or assistance, PUA, at the federal level. We've heard that since the beginning, and we knew that was a flaw. But like I said, I had a choice of either voting for something that was flawed or getting nothing at all, and I just knew that our citizens were going to need something as this whole thing started out. I want to let you know, Alan, that I think what we did by doing that, we created a situation where up to, I think, 63% of our workforce, that equates to about 93 million workers, are receiving more in unemployment compensation than they did earn at work. And that really creates a disparity in compensation between people that are working and people that are on unemployment, and it makes it kind of unfair, obviously, and also it's essentially unaffordable. So when I talk about what's next, that's one of the things I'm going to be looking at very, very carefully, because if we can't remedy that situation, that's going to be a problem for me in being able to support it. I know that there are employers that are desperate for their employees to come back, and they have the work. I hear almost every day about work that's being turned down by companies that could do the work if the employees would come back, but their employees are incentivized not to come back. So what we got to do, Alan, obviously, is figure out the right amount and the sweet spot for people like there was a gentleman that called earlier that is retired, and he wants to do some driving and make some extra money in the gig economy, and those that and obviously but he's lost that business. And then there's those that could go back to work because their employer is calling them back, but they're incentivized not to go back by the level of compensation from when you add up the state and the federal together, it can be lucrative for folks. So that's one of the things that there's a point of discussion, to be sure. Alan, you need to know that, and it's something that I will be considering very carefully as the legislation, assuming it comes in the next week or two, when it shows up. I'll be looking at that very directly. Thanks for the call, Alan. Laura, is there another question, please?
Our last question for this evening is coming from Robin K.
Hi, Robin. Are you
there? Hello, sir. Yes. Can you hear me?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. What can I do for you?
I just have basically a twofold question.
Okay.
First of all, I was wondering, is there anybody trying to put a plan together to set a standard on how the country can safely open various types of business? And second, if this plan is approved by the president, could he issue an executive order that could bypass the governor's authority, and then it would become the American citizens' choice on if they chose to open or not open, and they would follow the standards that the federal government set?
Yeah, Robin, it's a great question, and I sense there's probably some frustration at different states doing different things and different sets of standards, even within the state, for different businesses, what have you. I mean, when we in Pennsylvania, for instance, we had shut down the realtors, we had shut down the governor had shut down car dealers, but in Maryland and surrounding states, quite honestly, both those enterprises were open, and so that was very frustrating for people. Robin, I got to tell you what there are, and of course these change a little bit as time goes on as well, so that's frustrating. But there are general CDC guidelines, Center for Disease Control, CDC guidelines for controlling the spread of COVID-19. But there is not, and I doubt there will be, a standard opening plan for businesses, because we as you know, Robin, we have a federalist system in the United States of America, and so we rely on the states to do that work as it was designed to do. And so unfortunately, if you have a governor, if we have a state that is reluctant to do that, or we don't agree with it, that's the problem that we have, and that is the problem that certain states do have in this regard. and the president has rightfully and constitutionally allowed the governors to govern their states, and that's how it's supposed to be. So, and so I don't expect to see a plan, Robin. I don't think you should expect to see an opening plan other than guidelines from the federal government, from the health agencies about how to do it safely and how to reduce. It's all about reducing the risk, right? There's a risk of there's a risk of seasonal flu every year. But we still operate our businesses, our schools, and our livelihoods knowing that that a certain amount of people are going to catch it and a certain amount of people are going to perish every year. So, but it's all about reducing the risk. The federal government is going to continue to provide that guidance, and it is going to change as we learn more. When we started out, in early spring, we didn't know what the effect on kids or kids to their parents or grandparents would be. We know that much better now. So you can see that the president is encouraging schools to open. And the administration continues to do that from the top to the bottom, but we can't and the president can't make the states do it, and he's not going to do it through executive order or anything like that, but he is going to use the megaphone that he has to try and inform people and to encourage the governors to do that, and to encourage the citizenry across the country and, of course, across our Commonwealth to be vocal to the governor and say, look, we have the standards at the federal level for reducing the risk. Why can't we follow that? Why can't my children be in school? Why can't we open these businesses as long as we follow these protocols and as long as our numbers continue to decrease? And by the way, it's not just the numbers of positive COVID-19 test cases, because as we test more, obviously we're going to find more, but it's how we handle those cases, and is there a high mortality rate, and can our hospitals handle them, and are the treatments effective, and as they emerge, do we keep doing better? If that's the case, the point is that we should be able to reduce the risk and live our lives and get back to work and back to our livelihoods and the things that are important to us, and I think that we can do that, but that's going to come, Robin, most of that is going to come with some guidance. It's going to come from the state level. And I suspect you probably didn't want to hear that, but I do think that that's appropriate, even though it frustrates me. As you've heard, I've tried to get in touch with the governor and to talk about these issues and the policies for months now, and have been unable to do that, or have not been able to receive a response. Listen, I guess our hour is up. I sure appreciate the input, and I just want to let you know that our offices are and had stayed open throughout this. Our staff works, even though we might not be physically present under the governor's current guidelines, our office members and our staff members are present, so I urge you to contact us if you have any questions, if you have some issues that you think that we can resolve or questions that we can answer. I just encourage you to do that. It is an honor to serve as your member of Congress, and I remember every single day who my boss is, and so I work for you. If there's a question about how I voted on something or what's coming up, I just encourage you to call, to write, to email, and to ask. And with that, I just hope that everybody can stay safe and stay healthy and be productive and successful. And with that, I wish you a great evening and wish you God's blessings. Thank you.